Oh, hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is, of course, the best time of the day. It is 7 o'clock. It is March 25th, 2010, and it is day 9, daily number 90. Oh, just 10 more away from 100. Yeah, I mean, we got people like Diggity going for like day 9 daily, he doesn't do a day 9 daily. He does like the day Diggity daily or whatever it is, but Diggity's like hit commentary 1,000 not long ago, so, I'll be catching up to him soon. But hey, number 90 today, do a little bit of Thug Snap action, and I'm praying right now that when I open up Battle.net 2.0, it lets me log on. I really sincerely hope it does. So while I'm trying to get this stuff set up, while I'm doing a little bit of praying, I just wanted to briefly talk about the new patch that came out. Specifically that they nerfed Dark Templar. I don't know why they did that. Like, DTs are now even harder to get, and I wasn't even getting them in the first place. Like, they need to make DTs, like, useful. They need to, like, make it so that, like, one DT can morph into 2 Archons. So that way the unit that I never use can morph into 2 other units that I really don't ever want to use either. But at the very least, I'll be like, oh, cool, maybe I'll do some, like, get 2 DTs and, like, Archon Rush a Terran, and then go EMPs imbalanced. Something like that, But other than that, I don't mind the patch too much. I don't really think they hurt anyone too badly. I know a lot of Protosses out there are like, oh, the Colossus, I can't one-shot everything now. But come on, just make 2 Colossi. That's what you're going to do anyways. And, of course, Terran, it's like they didn't weaken Terran. They just said, hey, Terrans, whatever you learned, you're gonna have to relearn it. Tweak the Viking a little bit, and this takes a little longer, it takes a little shorter, it's cheaper, it's more expensive, no big deal. Either way, I'm pretty pleased that things are as balanced as they are right now. I mean, for instance, in someone did a statistical analysis of, like, the top players, and it literally was, like, 30%, 30%, 30% for each of the 3 races, and 10% random. Which is sick, right? Just to see that distribution there already. So I am already delighted that is actually going on. So today what we're actually going to be checking out is Liquid Nazgul. Oh yeah, he's a man from somewhere. He's the Netherlands. Sorry, that's the word escaped me. But yeah, it's really good. It's really good watching his games. And what's so cool about watching Nazgul in these streams is that in these ESL games is that he went 2-1, 2-1, and 2-0 against a whole bunch of Zerg players in the ESL tournament. And specifically, we're going to be looking at his Blistering Sands build. And what's cool about it is that it's a build, right? It's an actual build. Like, it's a play. It has a through line. There's a thought-out beginning, middle, and end to it. We're going to talk about it. We're basically going to wish that we were in the Netherlands just so we could pet Nazgul. Pet him right on the bridge of his Dutch nose. Go, very, very good, Nazgul. Thank you for that build order. Because the thing that is really prevalent on the American servers that deeply bothers me is that people tend to sit and turtle until they get the money composition, right? They just sit there until they get the units that they want to get, and they attack around 160 food. So you'll see, like, Protosses turtle on Kulos Ravine, get an expansion up, and then just get, like, a bunch of Colossi, a bunch of Immortals, Templar, I mean, the whole tech tree, they'll Chrono Boost some Forges, they're like 2-2 when they move out or something. And, I mean, they'll win a lot of times just because the Zerg player isn't particularly competent, because, no one's really that competent at StarCraft 2 yet. And they'll just do that every game. And that bugs me, because the instant you're up against someone who has any semblance of aggression or of realizing, hey, that guy's sitting passively and just building up. Now, I'm just going to, I'm just going to attack. It looks like, sorry, I'm getting messaged here, and I have to close that one down. But anyways, what was I talking about? Oh, yeah, and once you get anyone who has any amount of aggression whatsoever, you're pretty much just going to lose, right? It's going to be a bit of an issue. So that's what's so cool about this game right here, that we're actually getting the chance to look at a build right here. So let's just go ahead and transition over to the main screen. Look at the fact that we actually are loading this replay. Oh, fantastic. So this game is Nazgul against Oh Really on Blistering Sands coming up right here. So you can get all these games. These are the ESL games that were recently released. And it's a pretty cool, aggressive opening from Nazgul. And again, we're just going to be looking at several Zerg games. This is Oh Really, or Orally, or however it's supposed to be pronounced. Of course, I'm going to pronounce it Oh Really because of the friendly Oh Really owl. That's the sort of owl that gets it. But anyways, excuse me, Oh Really has done very well. Oh, hi, Rat. In a cast. Yeah, this is the sort of thing that, Oh Really did really well in the Zotac Cups. I think he got either first or second. Oh, no, he got No, I think he did beat Morrow. That's right. I believe he got first in that Zotac Cup. So he's an unbelievably strong European player. So right here, we have Nazgul already, building a pylon down here. Okay, so what we're going to see is that he, you'll note that he even chrono boosted to get up to this point. Right? So that's kind of cool already. It looks like, is that a pylon on 10? Well, let's actually back up and just double check this. Because it may have been. Yeah, look, pylon on 10. Already sort of interesting, right? A little bit unorthodox. And then throwing down a gateway immediately. And look at this positioning already. It implies that something will be thrown down here. Ooh. So that's pretty cool so far. And then going back to chrono boosting his probes once again. What I love about Nazgul is Nazgul has been the most creative in terms of chrono boosting that I've seen. I've seen him both pylon on 8 so he can chrono boost early on and get probes out right away, and now I'm seeing him pylon on 10, having chrono boosted beforehand to get the probes out as quickly as possible. A lot of creativity there. Don't be scared to fiddle around with stuff like this and see if you can make something work. Don't get too stuck to defaults, because a lot of times if you take those defaults for granted, you lose sight of all this cool creative stuff that could possibly go down. Really is doing the pretty normal stuff, getting the spawning pool up pretty early, looks like 14 or so. It's not too important that I really focus on what the exact build of O'Reilly is. We're just going to focus on the trends and spend most of our time just, petting Nazgul from across the seas. And here we have, look, already good pylon placement. Second pylon, already spotting the destructible rocks to make sure nothing else is going on here. Okay, so we have a chrono boosted Zealot, not just an ordinary Zealot, but a chrono boosted one. And look, it looks like this chrono boost was saved because right when this Zealot finishes, we have yet another 25 energy to chrono boost it. And there it goes. Hooray! So a lot of Zergs have been favoring like a 15 pool, 16 hatchery or so. And this Zealot messes with that quite a bit. So already what we're seeing is, looks like he had money earlier on to build that hatch. He's just barely underneath enough money to do that. But of course, it looks like he's backing off a little bit. Yeah, look, the Queen's almost done. Had to delay this hatchery because he felt pressured by this Zealot. And look, ooh, a wall off. All right, sweet. Very clear now why we have this exact placement. We want to be able to wall off and expand right away. Part of me feels like maybe we could throw down the Nexus and then Forge. I don't necessarily know if that's true, but I say it just because it's something, that if I were doing this build, I would want to check out. And in case any of you didn't know, Zealots are a lot stronger against Zerglings. In StarCraft 1, 3 Zerglings could kill a Zealot. In StarCraft 2, you need way more than 3 Zerglings to even put up a fight. So 1 gateway worth of Zealots is very intimidating to be against. And look, this Queen's coming down. Now, let's pause for a moment and just think about Nazgul's situation, right? He has 3 Zealots here. Whether they live or die, that's not really the focus, right? They're doing a ton of damage. It's already delayed this hatch quite a bit. And look at this Queen down here fighting. As we can see, it has 25 energy, so we're already sort of eating in to any sort of macro that Zerg's going to be doing. And if we go back here, cool, we have this wall off. We almost have enough for a Nexus. If something insane happened, like suddenly 5 Roaches pop down here, we'd have enough time to build some cannons behind here. Excellent. Looks good. Meanwhile, in Zerg's base, no gas really mined yet. All these larvae are being devoted to Zerglings. As you can see, by noting all these eggs, we know that the 4 larvae just popped off the hatch. So this Queen's really, not where she wants to be. And look at that. Eliminated. Uh-oh. Get me out of here. Poor Queen. Poor Queen. And meanwhile, Nazgul goes off to killing this again. Oh, it's really good. Oh yeah, this killing's really good. He doesn't actually sound like that, I want everyone to know. But, of course, because it's just me by myself in my room, I'm going to tell myself that that's a good Nazgul impersonation. And then I'm awesome. So, continuing the aggression, as usual. And look at this. Jesus, that's a ton of damage! And in the meanwhile, is Naz overcommitting to it? Well, no. Look, how many probes he has. That's a ton of probes. Just go to the unit counting station. Look at this difference. 11 drones, 21 probes. Getting the expansion up. Already has a Forge wall off. Super effective build, literally going as well as possible. So you have a couple of Greeblies. I think they're called Broodlings, but of course we like to call them by what they look like, Greeblies. And at this point, I think O'Reilly very clearly is kind of screwed at this point in time. Continuing to make Zerglings, we have a Roach Warren up, but, unit counting station, still only 14 drones, not in exactly the best shape. and building a photon cannon here. I mean, in this particular circumstance, in this game, because we're going to be watching multiple games, because fortunately the ESL had multiple games in it. It wasn't just a one-game series. We're not going to focus too much about what could Zerg possibly do to deal with this. But more just, hey, let's look at this general flow. Look, one cannon, no big emphasis on that. And in the meantime, throwing down 2 geysers relatively early on. Okay, cool. Getting Cybernetics Core early on. Cool. Why get 2 gases? That's an interesting question. Oh yeah, I know there's aggression here, but I'm going to ignore it. Why get 2 gases here early on? Why not just get 1 gas or something like that and continue to put the pressure on? Well, if we get 2 gases, we can start investing in sentries, which can help us, make walls, can help us deal with emergencies, are just a generally good unit. And in particular, look at that, 50 minerals, 100 gas. It means we can spend all the gas that we're bringing in, and all that minerals we can spend on making more buildings, making more gateways, all that other stuff. Good distribution of resources there. And the Zealots are now having the opportunity to freak out. It's a Roach! Because that's the thing about Roaches. Like, if you get like 1 Roach as Zerg, Infinity Zealots probably have to back off early on. Literally, infinity of them. So, doing a nice little chrono boost, getting the warp gates up, building a cannon back here, nice and safe. On Blistering Sands, we have to worry about this back door, but our front door is kind of narrow. On another map, we might have a wider front door, but we wouldn't have these back rocks, so it's a nice little trade-off. In other words, I don't think that this build necessarily desperately needs to be on Blistering Sands. Here's a cute question. Why are these cannons set back here instead of all the way, or excuse me, not all the way over here, like 1 hex over? Why not build it right about there? Well, notice that photon cannons have a range of 7, and that roaches have a range of 3. We can place it here so we can actually hit roaches and they can't hit us. Awesome. Bejujular. And of course, back off lings. I don't think so. Or, take some ling hits. Sometimes they like to just hang in there. But, I mean, at this point, someone might say, this really is a little too excessive. I perhaps think Nazgul could have snuck in 1 less cannon, but you know what? He's at such a huge lead. This hatch finished and died, and he killed a queen. I mean, he's fine. Nothing to worry about here. Getting a robotics facility, because again, just going to throw down some immortals early on, and you're going to be fine in that regard. And yes, I know that there's this stuff going on, but let's focus more on the build itself. If our opponent wasn't going for roaches, we could perhaps delay this, but since we clearly know he's on 1 base, the only really threat he has against us is some sort of all-in-ish type play with roaches. So let's just go ahead and throw down a robotics facility, and then go back to making gateways, so that way we can have a usual sort of composition of zealots, sentries, some stalkers, and immortals, and that's just a great, relatively fast push to just win the game right off the bat. And of course, getting an observer before you get the immortal is pretty standard in really any circumstance we're getting immortal. And look, getting more geysers. Again, oh no, he only has 3 probes here. And I suppose we could transfer a little bit more. But again, it's cool to be down on probes. It's not a big deal, because we can spend so much gas on sentries, which are a very, very strong unit. I think that is the real, a nice benchmark already to tell if a Protoss player is really in it, is whether he's building a lot of sentries. Because too often Protoss players are neglecting the gas just because it's sort of instinctive, Yeah, my opponent's going to be making stuff like roaches, a nice sort of meaty, strong unit. So I'm going to be making dragoons and zealots, or the equivalent of them, zealots and stalkers. That's a nice little carryover from StarCraft 1 that, is useful in some circumstances, but can be harmful in StarCraft 2. The Sentry is a completely new unit, and it tends to get underused. So for instance, look at this. Really high gas count. Would love to see some Sentries start getting thrown down. So let's go ahead and speed this game up, because what's kind of funny is that, oh really, killed off this wall. And to be honest, this helps Nazgul more than it helps oh really. Because now Nazgul has a really easy chance to just sort of dart in here. And of course the Overlord's checking up. Oh, whoop, never mind. Sorry, I didn't mean it. And getting some extra immortals. Great. And then see, look at this. Warping in more sentries. Perfect. Perfect. I would love if there was any sort of upgrade here as well. That, to me, would really seal the deal. Oh, I didn't plan that. That was Spider Sense was going crazy. You know what? I actually want to pause just for a moment, just to talk about that. Let me actually rotate my camera. I've been reading Ultimate Spider-Man, I love it. It's so good. It's Spider-Man, like reimagined for the modern age. So instead of Spider-Man being like the photographer at the Daily Bugle, he's a photographer and webmaster. Oh, and instead of him being like right about to get out of high school and going to college, he's just like solid high school. He's like 15. So everything in the entire comic book series is just like so juvenile. He's like, I had to break up with Mary Jane because she just doesn't understand that I'm Spider-Man and she'll die if she's dating me, which means that now I can't make out with her in the lunchroom. It's just like, oh man, what a crisis, seriously. And there was this other guy who was like, the Moon Knight has cometh to punish you, Spider-Man. This city is, falling to corruption because of you. And then Spider-Man says, sorry, and kicks him right in the face and says, I had self-righteous for lunch. Oh man. Oh god. I love, me and my preteen buddies enjoy that comic book series quite a bit. So of course a lot of jokes I've been making nowadays are all Spider-Man related. But anyways, a little bit late on this 4G Ruha. By the way, look at this placement. Look at this. Look at this. Look at him shoot those roaches. Look at them shoot those roaches and how helpless these roaches are to try to attack it back. So throwing down some of these nice little wall of Ruhas. And of course it does some nice damage. But again, you know what? This composition is, I think, is super noteworthy. I think it's a little bit low on the Zealots. Perhaps a little bit too early to push out. But just in general, a lot of Zealots, but then 2, 3 Immortals, 4 is quite a bit here, and some Sentries. Incredibly good. You can do a lot of timing pushes off one base with it, and then especially after you early expand, you can put a lot of pressure on the Zerg by moving out with this force. It's not going to be like, superhero epic level, win instantly type push that it would be if you were one-basing this, because you get everything out faster in the one-basing circumstance, but it's still very strong, especially after you've put the Zerg behind with all this pressure on the hatch early on. He's pretty much just going to have Roaches and Lings, which can't really put up a good fight against this. Generally, it's a lot of Zerglings that the Zerg wants, or a lot of Roaches. I mean, you can't get away with having some sort of cute composition. You really just need to have a nice, well-timed economy and a lot of stuff. And it's just a little bit too difficult to have that. And as we can kind of see by the replay progress bar, pretty interesting, pretty cool that he's able to win right now. And of course we throw down some nice walls. And I think it's pretty clear that already this game's essentially over. So I'm going to go ahead and log out and then eventually just sign out of this replay and load up the next game. So I think an excellent lesson to learn just from watching the series of games we're going to see today is the fact that Nazgul is going to do some pretty similar builds in these games. I mean, he's going to make some slight adjustments, but for the most part, for the games that I watched at the very least, he did that build over and over again. And too often players... I mean, if any of you are poker players, the term is leveling yourself. You convince yourself, like, okay, I did this build in game 1, so in game 2, he's going to think that I'm going to be thinking this, but I'm going to try to do this. Just get a good build. A good build, you should assume that your opponent even knows what you're doing. In fact, for a lot of major tournaments, I would practice with a friend of mine saying, this is what I'm doing, and I would give him vision in the game. And we would practice until I could win with vision. Because a solid build doesn't rely on any sort of, like, oh, I didn't expect that. It relies on just good, solid decision-making start to finish. So that's what's such an excellent lesson to learn from Nazgul in this game, or in this series of games that we're going to watch. It's just that he's going to do pretty much a similar build. So let's see if we can see some cues of whether he's going to be doing the same thing. Let's just keep an eye on that energy, because we did in fact see him chrono boost right away in the first game. Great. And then, hey, look, building our pylon right here on 10. And here comes up a gateway. Deflam! Throwing it down. Already nice things here. Have enough space here for cannons. Delicious. The delicious Dutchman Nazgul shows the players how to play. And of course, scouting out for an expansion. And, you'll note that this probe just darted right in. It saw this drone moving out. And a lot of players freak out when they see the drone and they're like, oh my god, I'm going to block his hatch so hard. Oh my god, I'm going to block his hatch. 2 reasons why that's not necessarily the best thing to do. First of all, is your build more vulnerable to an early pool? So I think one of the best instances of this is if in StarCraft 1, I'm Protoss and I'm trying to early expand. When I do that, a lot of times I'm worried about a 7 pool or a 9 pool or a 4 pool. So when I'm going to my opponent, it's so critical for me to run into his main and see if that pool is going down. Because if the pool is not going down, then I can build my Nexus before I build a Forge or any cannons at all. If it is going down, I gotta get cannons up ASAP. Whereas if I went to his hatch and tried to block it, sure, I'd delay his hatch a little bit, but some of the time he's going to be tricking me, and I'm going to lose to Zerglings. The rest of the time, I still haven't scouted his main, so I still don't know if the pool's early on, so you still technically are forced to get a Forge up. You know, it just doesn't help. So yeah, Nazgul could have done that, but, you know, perhaps his build has some sort of vulnerability to an early pool. So that's the first thing to think about. The second thing is, hey, Nazgul's actually 10 gating and chrono boosting that gateway, so we love it if our opponent's early expanding. And I have a sneeze coming on. It's going to happen. Oh my god, it almost happened. Ah, damn it, I hate it when I'm going to sneeze and it doesn't happen. God, oh man. Oh, because now I know, I can feel it. I can feel it. I got the gitchy. I'm feeling the gitchy. I know a sneeze is coming on, but we will never know exactly when. So here, already, Zerg is doing a slightly different build. In the other game, the Zerg went pool and then expanded down here. In this game, we have the expansion going up right now, and it looks like we have a pool going down immediately thereafter. Who am I kidding? As opposed to what? Oh, a pool immediately thereafter, as opposed to like a third hatch for an auto loss. But anyways, we have this next Zealot coming out, obviously getting ready to get chrono boosted again. Look how much identicality there is. He's doing the same thing, building this pylon here. Same thing, solid. It's a solid build. And this hatch is going to pay for Nazgul's planning. And here we have a drone trying to come down here, just flap his little wings to try to pull a little pressure on. Now, this, I think, is a really interesting choice by Nazgul. He notices that this pool is not up yet, so he's just going to go ahead and put pressure right in the main. Maybe try to take out a drone or two, or at the very least, screw up the mining. So look at this. This is so awesome. Drones on the retreat. Oh my god. 1 drone down. 2 drones down. Now, most important thing, anytime you see aggression in any replay, go back to the main and check out what's going on. Alright, he's still making probes. Let's actually open up the unit counting station to double check on this. His money's slowly building up. He could make a Forge. He could expand and then make a Forge because he walls himself off. Look at these drones. Look how not mining these drones are. Oh, isn't she a beauty? And right there we have some good little composition there. We have 2 Zealots and a probe. And you know what? Honestly, 2 Zealots is very difficult for Zerg to deal with. So look, that probe already fell. And yeah, these Zerglings are barely going to take out these Zealots, but look, another Zealot's coming down. So that was about 8-10 Zerglings. Here's another, some more Zerglings coming out. Here is a Queen up, going to be vomiting larvae. And look, there's really not that... Move out of the way, Queen, so I can make my point. Oh, well, whatever. I'll come back to that in a moment. Yeah, see, look, Naz still doing some good micro. Getting Zealots in here. And look, has 400 minerals. Should be getting ready to expand about now. I would imagine so. But, you know, look. 14 drones, 19 probes. Against Oh Really, this differential got a lot bigger real soon. So doing more of the micromanagement. So yeah, you know what? Losing Zealots, that's unfortunate. But to be honest, look at this. Look how many more Zerglings are being made. Zerg really should be making those as all drones instead. There are all the 16 drones right now. The Queen's getting ready for the next line of larvae coming up. But look, we throw the expansion down. And hey, we've walled off. Yeah, it's kind of unfortunate that he's going to come up and take some whacks at us. But we're going to be fine. We have these 2 Zealots here. We're getting another Zealot out. This will be able to defend us just fine. We'll be putting some cannons down, probably back a little bit for the same reasoning. You know, we get a little help with the Roaches. But of course, Nazgul was spotting this backside, is going to throw down a cannon here whenever this Forge finishes. And once again, look at these 3 Zealots doing so much damage to Zerglings. The Zealots are unbelievably strong. I mean, I personally prefer 2 gating just because I feel super ultra manly. But perhaps this is even way stronger, right? Because we're not overcommitting with any sort of huge number of gateways early on that we're not going to be producing out of in that circumstance. We're just getting a Nexus really fast, getting a Forge really fast. And then look, here's the double gas going down right now in the Cybernetics core already. And look how many Zerglings this Zerg player has made. Look at even more Zerglings. Jesus, he's, you know, constantly feeling pressured, even with just these 4 Zealots. Zerg's basically still in a little bit of panic mode. This guy's actually been idle for a very long time. And no Roach Warren, no Lair. It looks like Link speed's down, so this is going to help with some surrounds and that sort of thing. This is the main reason why we're getting link speed as Zerg. But man, no real next step to this. Just a lot of Zerglings, and then what happens? Looks like the Zerglings are going to get here just a little bit too late. So that's pretty cool, right? I like that moment quite a bit. And look, feeling great, right? Oh man, oh look, the robotics facility's almost done, so that way we can deal with roaches should that happen. Throwing down more gateways and the warp gates to get that ultra giga badass production. A 4th gateway. Oh, Nazgul. Oh, how you please me. And it's at this point that Horror's probably thinking, uh-oh, you know what? I overcommitted to Zerglings. I can't just sit back and defend with these. I really got to snap back and put on a little bit of pressure. So this is an understandable response from Horror. Now, that's a question I have. Let's just look a little bit at this, right? Like, here's right when the bust-in happens. I'm going to speed it up a little bit. And I'm actually going to stop it right when this dies. It looks like Zerglings can just push the probes out of the way. I'm not so certain I like that so much in terms of the AI. But, alas, excuse me, the purpose of the player is not to worry about whether I like or dislike the AI. It's to think about how to win in these circumstances. So sentries, super important to pop up. Awesome force field. Really shut down any possible aggression. Yeah, some probes are going to get in here. Or, by probes I mean Zerglings. That's a little obnoxious, but no big deal. The wall off is going down again. I'd actually prefer a 2nd sentry over a Zealot. And here we have the Robo Bay up. Okay, now note, someone might say, why not get some gateways before the Robo? I like getting this Robo early on because think of the threats that are at your front door, right? The threats that are on the table right now are a bunch of Zerglings doing some sort of bust-in, which, as we see, it looks like we can hold. And the other thing is a bunch of Roaches coming up. And more importantly, it's at this time, right when Nazgul starts building up everything, it's the first time that he's actually in the dark. It's the first time that he doesn't have any sort of sense of what the Zerg's doing. At the start, he had the Zealots really up in the face, so he could just sort of tell by the amount of Zerglings that were being made that Zerg wasn't doing anything different. So by getting this robotics facility up early, we can get the Observer out to get a great sense of what he's doing, and we can get those Immortals up for our first push, and likely rush to get the Immortals out if we see some sort of Roach all-in coming. So yeah, Nazgul just continuing to do some nice, solid follow-through play. The Zerg, you know, getting a Roach Warren, but once again, I don't see a 2nd Queen, I don't see a layer. This Roach Warren seems to have just been done. If we look at the unit counting station, I mean, 27 drones, even though this looks pretty close, 27 drones and 27 probes, Zerg really wants to be having a lot more drones at this point in the game, or at the very least, a lot more of something else. I mean, pretty much just drones is the only nice thing that Zerg has. He doesn't really have any units, any capacity to make many units. The 2nd Queen is only just now getting started. This is one issue with, you know, having the Forge get killed early on, is that you had a little bit of trouble making those cannons. But see, watch this, the Sentry 49, 50, oh! Oh, Nazgul. Oh, that was bejugular. Oh, man, what a little Jedi. And the probes holding down like little bosses. Doing their nice little cattle prod or whatever it is. They have, like, you know, mini police tasers or something like that. And, of course, it's more than enough to deal with some Zerglings. No probes here, but, you know, let's not focus on these minor details. Overall, we could clearly say to ourselves that a lot of this bust-in issue with the Zerglings happened because there was 1 cannon and not 2. And I think that's pretty accurate. So, oh no, Roach is at the front door. No problem. Look, Immortal coming out, chrono boosting the Immortal. Awesome. Very flexible little opening. More sentries coming out. Sentries are the key to so many openings for Protoss. I mean, first of all, let's just briefly talk about sentries. For example, if we're one basing and we want to do some sort of tech, we can go Zealot and then Sentry. Just straight off the bat if we do fast tech. And then if he tries to run up our ramp, we can just force field right there, split his guys in half, and just eliminate small numbers of stuff, allowing us to continue to tech. Same way with these early expansions. Yeah, we might lose this, but we can just force field these Zerglings in half, or these Roaches, and we'll end up being fine. So I think that is... The sentries are just as important as the Zealot Rush, and the fast tech to Immortals, and the cannons. Super important component of the build. I'm doing a little bit of messing around. Oh, it's fortunate there was an Overlord there. as they use the guns from Ghostbusters to kill it off. Excellent. And Zerg, I think, is doing some more smart stuff. He's killing off these destructible rocks. In the Oh Really game, I was just sort of laughing like, yeah, this probably hurt Oh Really more because now Nazgul has an easy path to pop out. In this circumstance, though, Horror has a little bit better of an economy than Oh Really did. Look, it has slightly ahead on the drone count. And this puts more pressure on the Protoss, who has been losing almost all these probes, right? So he's going to have to come back, probably make some cannons. At the very least, it's going to freak him out. And with this added aggression, we end up expanding here as Zerg, partly because, though we would want to expand here, these units are already committed to trying to win back some of the disadvantage we're at. And of course, we want to briefly poke back and check out the player's mains. Zerg is tech to a layer. None of the upgrades, it looks like, are up. None of the burrows up yet. Probably a more recently finished layer. Looks like we have some extra queens here. It looks like this queen's going to be taking a trip down here. And I think this is smart, actually, to get this third queen so early, so that way we can go down to this hatch so early on, is because we really want a ton of larvae, so we can really pump out tons of roaches and zerglings, a lot of these low-tech level units, so that way we can actually be able to deal with this immortal gateway timing push. And see, look at how cool these sentries are. Yes, indeed. This probably would have been able to do some serious damage here, but thanks to the sentries being bejugular and all that jank, ended up being less than effective. And warp gates, we get to see part of the reason why they are cool. We have some stalkers popping out. Stalkers, which in the past just recently got a buff, which I'm delighted about. Very pleased about the stalker change. And of course it's not that significant of a buff. Stalkers are 8 with a +6 upgrade. It got changed to 10 with a +4 upgrade. Either way, that's awesome enough for me. And pulling back, right? Nice, solid little defensive play here. I probably might keep a sentry here and just rejoin it if I want to go for the attack. I don't like this as just sort of a hold point. But I think Nazgul's aware of that and pulling right on back. Yeah, look, continuing just to go for Immortal Warp Gate. Nice, solid opening. We can see some opportunities for transitions here to eventually get a, perhaps, robotic support bay for Colossi if we want to go into a late stage of the game. If we made maybe less Immortals, we could actually go for a Twilight Council, get the upgrades for Zealots, start getting High Templar, which, as you excuse me. Forgot to swallow before I began breathing. Yeah, it's not so good to inhale your own saliva. But anyways, yeah. You could be taking to Storm to be able to deal with this stuff. But either way, going for Storm or going for Colossus, this push leads into either one of those very, very nicely. So we see Zerg continuing to try to just pretty much macro up. I just want to briefly pause. Notice that there's a slight lead of food here. It's 100 food versus about 80 food. Normally this is a lot closer in StarCraft 2. Zerg's done an admirable job of trying to pull back and like hang into this game, but I mean, as we can see, this push is just really, really large. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the notion of the ball after this game, which is, it sounds more abstract than it really is. But it's about who has the advantage. But until then, let's just briefly just know what we're seeing. Really strong push. It's a little bit unfortunate. One might say, yeah, I shouldn't expand here because it's so vulnerable. But, I mean, really you should have enough units to be able to defend. It's just that Zerg overcommitted to units instead of econ early on. And then, just for a little bit of cleanup, we're just going to zoom ahead on here. Yeah, pretty straightforward. Oh, look at the force fields. Yes, indeed. And the queen evaporates, poor thing. All she ever did was puke, and then she got shot to death. That's a pretty sad obituary. And then it looks like you barely might hold, and alas, it was not meant to be. And of course the good game, because as we always like to know, everyone in Europe is friendly and happy with one another, always. Pretty similar to us American players, right? But anyways, the big thing to note about Zerg's opening. So let's just think for a minute. Let's just pause and take a moment to ponder, to pontificate on the possibilities of Zerg there. I personally think that it should be all about economy in that case. You should focus as heavily as you can on just barely defending and then snapping forward with as many drones as you can. too often in new games, people will figure out ways to get a fast win early on. So for instance, I was actually playing games against my brother, and he did a Zergling all-in against me, and it just crushed me, right? And afterwards, Nick's like, yeah, that was an all-in, I know, totally. But, you know, a lot of other players would do that sort of Zergling all-in and say, hey, I can beat early expanding Terrans if I just make a bunch of Zerglings. And they straighten their imaginary nerd tie. The issue is, yeah, that's true, you can get wins off it, but after a while, once people start expecting that and planning for it, it means that suddenly you don't have a strategy anymore. So for instance, when I was a kid, when I just started to play Brood War on the internet, my strat literally every game was to slow drop lurkers into the back of his base. And I would win until once upon a time I played against a player who just, built a turret back there and just had stuff and killed it. And I was just like, oh my god, I can't win ever now. So this actually, a lot of players like to say that, oh yeah, I've worked out of this phase, I don't do that anymore. But they fall back into it whenever they get thrown off balance. So in that game that we just saw, Nazgul's attack throws people off balance early on. Horror probably had some nice long game plan that involved 2 queens, tons of drones, getting roaches, but instead he made all of these Zerglings early on. So what did he do? He made way more Zerglings than he needed to, and then did an all-in style attack, and followed it up with another all-in style attack. He made a ton of Zerglings, should have just taken a brief breather, focus on what would have been the optimal play, which pretty much would have been to drone and take that gold mineral patch, and then would have been able to put up a reasonable fight for the rest of the game. Probably would have been pretty even, because again, Nazgul's build is stable. So that, I think, is such an important idea to note in those games, is just how critical it is not to overreact to these sorts of defenses. What might happen is you overreact at the time, and then you need to think on how to fix it. So once again, I was playing against my brother, and he Zealot rushed me, and I overreacted to it, right? I tried to make some spine crawlers to defend, and I tried to make all these Zerglings, and I barely held it off. And then I had 20 Zerglings left over, and I attacked, and he just had 10 Zealots and 2 cannons, and I was just like, alright, I'm dead, I leave. So after I practiced it, I now know that against some sort of 2-gate Zealot rush, I need to get a second queen very quickly, literally right when the hatch finishes, make a second queen in favor of making Zerglings. And then I slowly catch up on the Zerglings, and you do a little bit of micro until you can finally get both queens at the front, and then you can repel the 2-gate Zealot rush. And then you send your queens back, and you can drone really hard. And the reason I chose this defense of getting the second queen really early on is because not only does it help me stay alive, but it is an econ-focused follow-through, right? Once I hold, suddenly I can be getting 14 larvae at a time, basically 3 from each hatch, and then 4 from each queen. It's tons and tons of drones just, screaming out of my bases. And then this sets me up for a nice continuation. So that's definitely a useful thing to note. Trying to think of ways to just snap back into the econ game. And of course, it's really easy to let that happen. It's really easy to screw up and not do as good a job, and you'll feel it, you'll be Zerg and you'll be like, oh, I only have 10 drones. I normally have expanded here, but I can't, and I don't have any gas. You'll feel it, and whenever you get that feeling of, get a friend and just practice it, or at the very least, think about it and then try it against a computer or something like that. I seriously think that everyone should get on Team Liquid and create the StarCraft 2 practice partner thread and be like, I'm listening to Day 9, I have a StarCraft notebook, I want a practice buddy now too, and etc. So anyways, we see Nazgul doing pretty much the same thing again. Let's see what sort of defense Nagram goes for. Alternatively, another thing that I'm thinking of is instead of going the heavy economic route, is to go for roaches pretty early on. Do a pool now and a gas now and get a queen and then get roaches, because this will repel this Zealot real nicely. So what you would do is you would get 6-7 roaches, not too many, and you try to do junk to the front, and when that doesn't work, you try to do junk here. Or you take those roaches and you try to do junk here. But while you are doing any sort of aggression or moving around with the roaches, you're doing nothing but making drones at your hatchery and focusing on it expanding. So with that just brief idea, let me briefly keep the idea of the ball. It's basically who has the command, right? Who is dictating the action. So in a Zealot rush, the Zealot rushing player is the one who's in your face. He has the ball. And then when the Zerg holds it off and the Protoss has to retreat behind his cannons, now Zerg has the ball. You know, Zerg has map control. He can move around freely. When that immortal Stalker Sentry push comes over, now Protoss has the ball, you know. And the reason I always bring that up is it's important to note whenever you have the ball that you really do get a lot of leeway with what you're doing. And, you know, you can expand, you can make drones, you can set up for all these things. Just to note that there's a nice little back and forth action. And you should be aware of times when you're giving it up, right? Nazgul is going to be aggressive, and then he's going to give it up as he expands, and then he's going to be aggressive again with that immortal push. So big errors people have are just trying to grab the ball for too long. You know, they'll be aggressive with this Zealot rush, then they'll expand, and they'll build 2 more gateways and keep rushing, and they'll try to add on a robotics facility down here so that way they can get immortals and keep on rushing. And that's really a little bit too difficult to do. That's asking a little bit too much. Or players will not take the ball enough, which is something I was talking about at the start of the cast, where players will just turtle and then sit here and wait until they have the money composition, and they will move out only then. So this is fantastic. Okay, I didn't actually plan this. I only saw 2 of the 3 games, but Nogron looks like he is doing a different build from Oh Really and a different build from Horror. Horror early expanded. Oh Really went pool and then expanded, and Nogron looks like he's going for relatively fast roaches. Let's see how Nazgul responds. Still chrono boosting Zealots. Looks like he's well aware of those roaches and therefore is sending a probe super early to get the cannon down. Once again, note the pylon placement leaves space for cannons here, so the cannons can shoot the roaches, but the roaches cannot shoot the cannons back. And of course, we are seeing yet again another distinct advantage of any sort of early Zealot pressure. Forces our opponent to make Zerglings. Freaks the opponent out a little bit, rightfully so. Should be seeing some roaches come out soon, which, you know, will be the end of that. And, you know, the forge is down, that's great. And I'm actually going to hold on this Nexus and just note that there's constant probe production here. So we have a little bit of micromanagement going on. The Queen's getting pulled back. Did we prevent the Queen from being away too long? Not quite, it looks like. Notice it's at 19 energy, 20 energy, so it's actually going to be back just in time to be able to add a few more larvae to the front, unless she's getting over aggro. Come on back, girly. There we go. Oh man, Naz is really pushing it. What a man. Look at that. Forge for the wall-in, then Nexus. Pff, I don't need no stinking cannons. And look, building the cannons, 1 space back. So awesome with that consistency. And again, we have the pylon here. More drones popping out. Alright, cool. Hey, awesome. This is exactly what we were just discussing. That Zerg right now wants to be making a lot of drones. Look at this. No drones in the gas. Just all of them right here mining as many minerals as possible, getting ready to expand. And these roaches are going to go ahead and try to do a little bit of aggression, as the French would say. And double gas looks like it's going to be going down right about now. You know, I still feel a little bit partial to 2 cannons, and this is a little bit cute going for a counterattack. Don't feel like you necessarily need to do this, but notice that this is, what I'm actually noticing is this is the first game where Nazgul has done this with his Zealots. Gone for some counterattack. When he was under pressure from Horror Zerglings, his Zealots were here. And I think this is a distinct decision. It's unique to an opponent who opens up getting roaches. Because if you think about it, I noted that really the optimal play for roaches would be to do a little bit of pressure with this, and then basically to pull back here and do some junk with this. And in the meantime, make as many drones as possible. And look, more drones coming out. Therefore, a counterattack with Zealots is perfect, right? We know we're already secure with these cannons. We know that these Zealots aren't necessary for our defense early on. They really only needed to do some aggressive action early on. And look at this. It looks like he's going to kill off this expansion. Oh my god, this build is awesome. And it's so versatile, right? And look, more Zergs are going, wait a minute, are you serious? I really can't get in there? And look, you're trying to shoot at this forge, but once again, it's going to be slightly out of range. I think maybe this Roach is out of range. But of course, Nazgul is just going to make some extra cannons, and then he's going to be fine. And he's chrono boosting this warp gate rush. And so an interesting thing that I'm noticing, oh yeah, obviously these zealots are still doing some damage, so it's going to take out yet another roach, maybe take out 2 roaches. Oh, uh-oh. Not as desired. But wow, yeah, look at these. These cannons really do cover this area completely. But I personally find it very interesting that Nazgul is going for more gateways instead of for a robotics facility. That I am very, very, very interested by. Perhaps it's that Nazgul feels that he is in such a lead that he needs to get gateways up just to make sure he doesn't die. Because pretty much no matter what goes on at this point, he's going to be fine. And then, of course, rebuilding the forge, no problem. Yeah, I'm real interested by that decision to not get the robotics facility first. Is it somewhere else? I don't actually see it anywhere else. There's the robotics facility going down. Yeah, wow, that's really interesting. So there's 2 reasons I would think that this is happening. One is, well, gee, I just need to make sure I don't die. That's perfectly good reason, right? If you're in a huge lead, just don't die, right? Just win. Tell that to 4U, who, played that epic game against Nada on that Char map, whatever it was called. Oh, God, that hurt to rewatch. So he could be thinking, oh man, I really need to get some warp gates up so I don't die to like a bunch of roaches coming in my back or something like that. Or he's saying to himself, you know what, I've battered Zerg down so much that I am going to start pressuring him even earlier with these warp gates. I am not going to get this slow robotics facility. I'm going to get these ninja ultra-fast gateways and push back against the roaching player to keep him to 1 base until my immortals come out. It's probably the first one. It's probably a little bit more of a defensive play. I still think that I'd prefer getting this robotics facility first. But I'm not so sure about that. And then, of course, some probes bringing their tasers forward once again. Yeah, it increasingly looks like a defensive play, right? Just being able to get these extra zealots and stalkers out to deal with this attack. Super important, I think. And the roach is going to retreat. Poor sad little roaches. And then chrono boosting an immortal. No, I still don't know, because I feel like if you got this robotics facility first, you could still chrono boost to this back door. And you're pretty much guaranteed to be up against a roaching player. So I just don't quite know what my opinion is on getting these warp gates before this robotics facility, but it's pretty close. It just can't be bad, what Nazgul's doing, either way. It just cannot possibly be bad. But, I want to note, right now, while we're seeing this, yeah, Zerg's trying to set his economy up. He has a little bit of extra money, so, I think that maybe these roaches still would have been better served killing off these destructible rocks. And then, because, if you kill these destructible rocks and then you go here, he's still going to have to waste money on the cannons. There's no real reason to run up here and kill the destructible rocks fast, unless you're gonna win it immediately that way. And against Nazgul, he's just not going to be unprepared for this. So yeah, this is Zerg's doing his usual sort of stuff, but notice that in all 3 games there was the same general pattern. It was Zealot Rush into expand with cannons here, and then go for robotics facility warp gate push, right? That's the general look of it. But let's think about the differences in these 3 games. In the first game, Nazgul played a little bit more defensively, right? Because his Zealot Rush just did so much damage. And then he got his immortal really fast, dealt with the roaches really well, and then just macroed up and won. In the second game, the Zealot Rush, continued to do damage, but it was a little bit more tense. It took a little bit longer for everything to get up. In particular, the ordering of the cannons, zealots, the nexus, that all kind of got rearranged around in these different circumstances. But everything still has the same basic look. I mean, in this game, notice that this forge came down much earlier than in the second game. Much, much, much earlier. And then this nexus went down. It's that sort of little adjustment that is a good build. A good build is not memorizing all these numbers up here, right? It is not doing that. That is probably the last step once you have all your possible deviations really well down solid. It's this general intuition of, oh yeah, against roaches I need to throw down this forge to wall off early. Yeah, I can make a nexus and then make the cannons, but I need to get this forge up early. Or to say, oh, I killed him off. That means I can get this nexus down and then make the forge and then make some cannons. That is the real hallmark of a strong player. And sadly, this Overlord is deathing. He is gooping up all over the base, which of course we can't see because I have my graphic settings on like bare minimum. I mean, this basically looks like Tetris. Continue to make some Immortals. You know, I think it might be a little Immortal heavy. He is transitioning to Observers, which is a solid play. You know, he hasn't gotten the Observers up yet. He just wants to make sure that he has the Immortals up so he doesn't die, and then he's going to check for any sort of weird, nutty stuff going on. Meanwhile, it looks like we have really fast Hydralisks coming up, so I am just delighted that in this game there's just such different stuff going on by the Zerg players. Creep tumors around, doing a lot of expanding. Finally taking down these destructible rocks. I definitely think that killing these off early are currently undervalued in the game, because these gold minerals are so huge. And the Observer just spinning his way over to check everything out. More gateways being added. I like this. Again, that's another key transition that I think is useful to note in this game. It ends up being 2 or 3 warp gates and a robotics facility, followed by 2 more gateways, 2 or 3 more gateways. I think that's really important to note. A lot of people will look at the game right now and go, oh yeah, 5 gateways and then a robo bay. But the earliness of the robo bay, I think, is super critical. Just to be able to do this push. Look, I mean, the Immortals are a really big percentage of that army. I mean, yeah, I know there's only 3 of them, and, you know, there's, what, like 10 units in this army total? But still, I mean, like, considering how expensive Immortals are, this is a lot of Immortals. It's actually really low on all the other units. So here comes a push. Sees the Hydralisks. Uh-oh, backing up. Getting some reinforcements. Getting some more gateway units to deal with those Hydralisks properly. Checking down here. The destructible rocks are still there, and like an idiot, I'm always tempted to destroy it just because I like seeing the rocks blow up. But, you know, don't do that. And, you know, what Nazgul just did here, where he took the units here, and then he just backed off, I call that a poke. He just pokes in there. And poking your opponent is good, because a lot of times when you have just, you know, let's say in that initial attack, it was just these units, a relatively small set of units. If you poke forward with it, sometimes your opponent goes, oh, and makes a whole bunch of units, and then when you back off, he's like, damn it, I made all these units and I didn't want to. So Nazgul is sort of doing the good old dance back and forth. Finally going to advance forward. We have a lot of Hydralisks and Zerglings thrown up. Guardian Shield. Be able to deal with those Hydras. Not really that many Roaches, so you know what, these Immortals aren't going to be particularly useful, but you know what, they're good units as it is, and because there was so much damage done to the Zerg's early economy with those Zealots, this push, even though it's not the optimal unit composition against Hydraling, it still is great. Works out fantastically. And if there were enough Hydrals that it got repelled, honestly, Nazgul has, what, 6 warp gates in here? He can already start getting ready to transition to an expansion up here to Templar and all that sort of stuff. So, very cool play by Nazgul. You know, the Team Liquid StarCraft 2 Invitational is coming up this weekend on Saturday. And, you know, Nazgul, he's been actually practicing today. I was actually sort of obsing him. Not against Zerg players. And, you know, if you are Nazgul's opponent, now that you've watched this, I kindly ask you forget about everything here, just to make sure that Nazgul's on an even playing field. So I'm going to go ahead and just take 1 or 2 questions. This was a relatively long show. It was of high quality, but still it was kind of long, so just want to make sure that we end it, because my poor throat needs a rest, so that way my eyes can go back to reading Ultimate Spider-Man. And by the way, today was a pretty awesome something. I lost my train of thought. I was like, you know, if I keep saying the word awesome, I'll remember what I was talking about. I totally didn't. Oh yeah, 1,800 viewers today. That's great. I know that the US BattleNet is down. I was actually on the Euro BattleNet. And so, delighted to have Alta 1,800 views, so thanks so much. Let's take this first question by Marlo, who says, Day 9, how do you think Banelings would have influenced the matchup we reviewed today? It seems like a transition to Banelings by the Zerg player would have been able to smash through the wall off. I asked this question... Oh, this is so funny, because this is what I was thinking of during the question. Marlo says, I asked this question keeping in mind Dimaga's build that we saw in the Zotac Cup. So let's briefly review what Marlo's referencing. So Jinro, who, as you know, I have unbelievable amounts of man love for. He's a Swedish superhero. He's Frozen Arbiter on the TeamLiquid.net forums. He is a super strong Terran player, and he played these brilliant games in the Zotac Cup number 4. And he got into the round of 4, which means he was going to be live cast, and he was really pumped about it. And he played against Dimaga, and General has this whole brilliant play planned out that opens up with getting some Hellions. And Dimaga just got 6 Banelings and 20 Speedlings, and right before the Hellions popped out, Dimaga would run up the ramp with the 6 Banelings, kill the 2 supply depots that were in the wall off, run in with 20 Zerglings, and then win. Because Terran's in negative food, the Hellions couldn't pop out. So suddenly people are starting to go, whoa, you can use Banelings, not so much as an offensive unit, but as just like a bust in the front tool. So perhaps using it to bust down the rocks or bust down the forge. So how would it have affected today's matchup? I want to go over and I want to look at the life of the forge and the life of the gateway. It's 550 and 550 for the forge, and then 500, 500 for the warp gate. So part of me feels like, although Banelings may have been able to bust down, you need a lot, because they do 80 damage per explosion. So what's that, like 16 Banelings to be able to do that much damage? That's kind of a lot. Or is it 16? Something like that. I don't know. I'm a math major. I don't deal with numbers. I deal with letters. So, he could have busted down the front, but that's a pretty steep investment to me. Maybe, because, the Zerg does have the opportunity to have 2 bases up, so perhaps he could have thrown the Banelings out there as well. So, what I would really say is to think less of Banelings as the unit that would allow you to bust down the front, and just think about the Baneling unit. Focus a little bit more on the rest of the interaction that would go on. So, for instance, if I was faced with a Zealot Rush, and I made way more Zerglings than I wanted to, so I have those 20 Zerglings left over, well, shit, how do I make use of these Zerglings? Throw down a Baneling nest, get 10 Banelings and a bunch more Zerglings, and then bust down his front door. That seems awesome to me, right? We're crushing the front door. No, you'll need 2 sentries at least by that time to be able to properly block it off. And you'll run in with a bunch of speed Zerglings. Because the speed Zerglings that tried to kill the Forge in Game 2, in the game against Horror, it took a lot of time to kill the Forge, so Nazgul could get all those probes in position. But in the circumstance I just described with the Banelings, it's just like instant Forge death, running with the Zerglings. So that, I think, may have been really cool and really effective. But once again, I wouldn't go for that. Like, if I held off my opponent's rush really well, and I didn't have too many Zerglings, then I would focus on drones. But if I screwed up and made too many Zerglings, I would make even more Zerglings, and then a bunch of Banelings, and then try to do damage that way. That, I think, is the coolest. So, let's see here. So people are asking a lot about the patch changes, but of course I'm going to be doing the Team Liquid podcast on Thursday. I was out for 2 weeks because, my apologies, I got hospitalized, LOL. So I'll try not to do that in the future. Oh yeah, great question by Kadred. Says, each of Nazgul's games ended around the 15-minute mark. While his build is strong and consistent, doesn't it make it predictable or vulnerable to a muta-heavy mid-game, especially considering his turtling early game? What do I think about that? Potentially. See, this is what I would say. So, I think that it's really important to note that Mutalisks don't kill ground stuff off too quickly. In particular, with a lot of Immortals and Zealots, if you move out with that push, right about the time that you move out with the Immortal Sentry Stalker Zealot push is around the time when those Mutalisks are really going to start to be able to do some stuff to the Protoss. So it means that the Zerg can't really take all those Mutalisks and just try to kill probes. He has to use it to defend this push. A lot of times there's a lot of danger there. Especially considering that early on Zerg got screwed with Zealots. And by getting that robotics facility so quickly, you can get the observers out very fast. And we did see Nazgul favor observers in a lot of circumstances. Occasionally he wouldn't, because he would know his opponent was going for a ton of roaches, so it would be fine. But I feel like if you were repelled and your opponent went for just Zerglings, you'd be like, yeah, I don't know what he's doing. I'm going to get this robotics facility fast. I'm going to scout him, and then you'd be like, oh, He's going for Mutalisks. And then you would double gas your Expo right away, start getting a whole bunch of Sentries and Stalkers, and you would get the Immortals, and then you would go ahead and push. And it would be hard for the Mutalisking player, and that would probably buy you time to be able to do some sort of transition after that point. But never underestimate the power of just attacking the player with your normal push, because even if he has air units and you don't have any anti-air, you can still just kill him off. There's actually a ton of Zerg vs. Zergs, like a ton of Zerg vs. Zergs that I've played, where my opponent is draping me. It's not even close. I've been losing like all game long. My cheeks are red. He even like asked who I was at the start of the game. He's like, "Oh my god, are you the real Day 9?" I'm like, only if I win, LOL, you know. Trying to be all chummy with him. And then I'm like losing to this guy. I'm like, oh no, oh god, because I know the replay's going to get posted somewhere. And then he gets Mutalisks up. I only have Roaches. And then I attack and I just like win. So, you know. I mean, that's never something to be underestimated. That, for some reason, is how Zerg vs. Zerg tends to be working nowadays. So, you know what? That's going to go ahead and wrap up Day 9 Daily number 90. I'm glad to have given Nazgul the opportunity to have been in the Day 9 Daily number 90, which is a very important Day 9 Daily because it has a number 9 in it. So which means we are only 10 episodes away from Day 9 Daily number 100. And with that, I'm putting more stuff on demand. Please tune into the Team Liquid StarCraft 2 Invitational this weekend. Please tune into the MLG show match that is happening on Saturday night. It will be Idra versus Cthon Luck. And keep in mind that Cthon Luck has just overtaken Idra as the #1 rank on that Platinum League. So with that, I'm going to go play some StarCraft 2. Peace out, ladies and gentlemen.